I'm Chip Freud, and this is the Artist Spotlight, conversations with contemporary artists based on 5 simple questions that explore the artist's journey, creativity, and sources of inspiration. Welcome to this episode of the Artist Spotlight podcast. Joining me today is Sally Terrell, a scratchboard artist based in Cary, North Carolina. Welcome, Sally.
Thank you.
I really appreciate you taking some time to talk to me and to be part of this new podcast, the Artist Spotlight. And as I indicated, this is really driven around 5 simple questions. And we'll just explore each one and see where the conversation takes us. So the first is, what is your earliest memory of making art of any kind?
Okay, so that's kind of a squirrely question for me because I don't count, crayons as a little kid. I never took an art class in high school, which is odd because my last 3 years of teaching, I was teaching arts to high school students. So that was ironic. I was very crafty. I did cross stitch. I made artsy quilts, that sort of thing. But I never really did anything art-wise until I was, in my 50s, early 50s. My husband, crazy man that he is, I've always said, oh man, I would love to be able to paint. I wish I could paint, I wish I was artistic, yada, yada. And for one Christmas, he decided to give me a pad of paper that you can paint on and a brush and some acrylic paints. And he said, okay, I think it's about time you tried it and just have fun with it. And that kind of started it all. Shortly thereafter, we moved to North Carolina because we were tired of Florida, the heat, the humidity, the crazy, all the things. And I don't know, there must have been something in the climate or the water of North Carolina. But after we moved up here, I started. And then I eventually got into a gallery. Well, Tom and I both did. The Chapel Hill Art Gallery, which went defunct a couple years later. But that pretty much started it all. I was doing acrylics and then I wandered off into other media. So I don't know if that leads into another question or not, but
Oh, great. I think it's interesting to look at each artist and sort of what their journey and their arc is. You as I found it later in life.
Absolutely.
But it has no less meaning, and you are certainly no less accomplished for the late start, at least in my opinion.
I'm kind of shocked by it, actually.
So on to the second question is, you're a scratchboard artist primarily, as I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
What led you to scratchboard, and what is it that draws you to that medium now?
Well, my last, like I mentioned, few years of teaching high school was teaching art. And I ran across some of these flexible ink-covered papers for doing scratch art in the supply cabinet. And I did not know what it was about or what it was for. So like a good little teacher, I went on Google and I looked up what people were doing in scratch art and was kind of amazed. So I started playing around with it while my kids were working on projects, and they would come up and say, hey, what's that? And I would tell them, and they went, are we going to be able to do that? And I was like, sure, when you finish your project, you can start on this. And a friend of mine who was demoing her technique in acrylics with my students saw it too. And so she was trying it out, and she looked up online and found a master scratchboarder named Ginger Garris, who lives in Chocowinity, North Carolina, near Little Washington, over towards the coast. So we contacted her, and amazingly enough, she said, yeah, we can do a Saturday workshop together if you want to come over. And so we did. And I had seen her work online and was kind of blown away. But seeing it in person was just like, wow, just absolutely stunning. And so she showed us techniques and, how to proceed, the process, different things that you can do. She uses an airbrush. I was like, oh, nope, I'm out, not ready for that yet. Which later on, of course, I ended up getting an airbrush, but she started me on this insane path. I went home and was just fired up, and I started working on pieces. And a few months later, I submitted them to the International Society of Scratchboard Artists, and was juried in as an active level member. And the few months after that, in the winter, they have an annual exhibition. And so they put out an artist call. And so I said, oh, what the heck? And I submitted this owl piece that I had done, and it got in. Oh, I was shocked, absolutely shocked. And so we ended up going to Ohio early that summer for the exhibition. I got to see my little owl next to all these amazing pieces by signature and master scratchboard artists. And I have made it into every show since then. And then just recently in June, I submitted again, third time, for signature level status, and I actually made it. So it's been,
Congratulations.
I know, it's been quite the journey, and it's only been about 4 years, 4.5 years. And you said something about what keeps me interested is that there's so much that you can do with Scratchboard, and the thing that really draws me in is the drama of the blackboard. And I've worked a lot on shading and values and trying to, enhance the drama, but also adding a little bit of color here and there, or a lot sometimes, depending on the piece. And I love doing animals. I found that out when I started scratching them, birds in particular, but I love doing animals in general. And then I branched out and tried other topics, which it's just, there's so much you can do. You can also work with a white clay board, airbrush the background in whatever colors you want, and then start scratching your design. So that was a new dimension that I learned a couple years later. So yeah, that's pretty much where I am right now, and still doing it.
Very cool. I had heard of Scratchboard, but didn't know much about it before meeting you. And I'm really struck by just, like you say, how dramatic the images are that you're creating.
Thank you. Yes, it's a lot of fun, and it's fun watching people's reactions too. It's not a well-known medium, and so they'll walk up and they look stunned and they're like, wow, what is that? So I get to explain my process. So that's pretty fun.
Well, cool. So what inspires your art? Where does it come from? The muse, if you will.
I would say Mother Nature primarily, because I love doing things that are out in nature, and especially animals, like I mentioned. And I love showing them in curious situations and positions, etc. I've done several chickadees in, sitting in a high heel shoe or sitting on top of an old school telephone with the dial and behind an old classic antique camera. I've got, and one sitting on a skateboard with a person's foot, like they're going for a ride, and the chickadee's kind of hitching a ride on the back of the skateboard. So that's my primary muse, but I love trying different things like still lifes or I'm doing some sunset landscapey stuff now, which is kind of fun because it's so different from feathers and fur, which I
Hmm.
focused on for like 4 years. So, there's a lot to keep me busy and inspired.
I would think that it's not surprising that the scratch board lends itself to feathers and fur, just the natural texture of the scratching. Is that a safe assumption?
Oh, yes. And that's probably why that's where I started first. And, because you can show a lot of depth in a 2D piece by doing some scratching, ink over it in your darker layer color, and then scratch on top of that, and then a lighter color of ink, and then scratch on top of that. And that gives it that almost 3D effect. So it's easy to do with feathers and fur.
Very cool. In terms of that, where does the art come from? Some artists I know use art as a way of processing their emotions. So, if they're sad, if they're angry, or whatever, that's an outlet. For me, my art comes from a place of peace and tranquility. If I'm not mentally in sort of that calm space, I have a hard time creating. How about you? Where does that art come from in sort of the emotional curves of life?
Well, absolutely that. It is a mental escape because I can just focus on what I'm doing, and it's a very zen activity, sitting there, doing this scratching, which people would find they say I have a lot of patience, or whatever, but you just keep scratching, and it's just you can let your mind float. But I would say probably the only emotion is boredom. I'm retired, so I'm one of these people. I got to be busy doing something. Might as well be art, because that's the way I am.
All right, all right. If you had a chance to speak with a person just starting out in art, what kind of advice would you give them?
Lots of different things. I've had a lot of people say that they've always wanted to try, or they wanted to start, and I always encourage them because people are fearful of starting art because they say, well, I'm not really that artistic. And I said, well, neither was I. And it's, you just have to jump in, try it, have fun with it. Don't be stressed by it. Just, play around. And so many adults, even teenagers, when I taught them, were afraid to do that. They didn't understand, just play around. I had students tell me, well, what do you want me to put on this piece of paper? I can't tell you that. You have to decide. And so, I just try to tell them to create what they want, what they like, play with colors, values, try different types of thing like I did until you find the medium of your choice. And then once you do that, just lots of hours practicing and working on it. I would say don't be afraid once you get to a certain level to put yourself out there and enter shows, try to get into a gallery, all those things, which, like authors that do books, you toss your stuff out there and you get rejected a million times before, somebody finally says yes. And you just have to set your emotions and your ego aside and just throw it all out there. I've been rejected from tons of shows, and fortunately, I've been accepted in a couple different galleries. One notable gallery in this area, I was not accepted. So, you just kind of have to guard yourself, your heart, whatever, and not take it personally. Which it's not easy to do that. I get that, but once you do it a number of times and you realize that decisions are in the hands of judges that you don't know, and you don't know what they're looking for, and your stuff may not be it. It doesn't mean that you're bad. It's just not what they're looking for. And so you really have to learn to not take it personally, because eventually you're going to get a judge that likes your stuff, and you may even win an award, which happened to me, which, I'm still shocked by. But you just keep at it.
Yeah, I think that's some sage advice, because the thing that I have to remind myself of is they're not judging and evaluating me as a person.
Mm-hmm.
They're evaluating my art in the context of whatever they're doing, right? Whether they're doing an exhibition, doing a gallery, whatever, a contest, where did that fit? And if we put so much of ourselves into our art, it's hard not to take that as a personal hit.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
The same way that, and I try to remind myself, I walk through galleries and I look at things and they're like, okay, that just does not speak to me.
Right. Exactly. And judges do the same thing.
Exactly.
Uh-huh.
So I think you're spot on there. And the last question I like to end with is, what artist would you recommend our listeners go out and check out? It could be somebody you just recently discovered, could be somebody you followed for a long time. They could be alive, they could be dead. Just somebody that you think we should get out and check out their work.
Well, obviously, I want to promote Scratchboard because nobody knows very much about it. So I would suggest that they go to the scratchboardsociety.org and check out the pieces. You can go to individual websites of the master scratchboarders, like Ginger Garris, who's the one that's got me started. One of my mentors is in California. Her name is Linda Heath Clark. And another one who's up in Canada is named Lori Dunn. And she just won Best in Show at our exhibition this year up in Niagara Falls. There are lots of styles and lots of different subject matters. And it's really interesting to see the techniques and what people can do with Scratchboard. I mean, people here locally that know me and they ooh and ah over my stuff. And then I say, no way, you really need to look at these guys over here, because that's a whole nother level. So I would encourage them to check them out if they want to be in awe of artistic talent, because that would do it.
Well, very good. Well, again, thanks for taking some time with me today.
Absolutely.
And sharing your thoughts on these 5 questions.
You bet.
Have yourself a great rest of the day.
You too. And thanks for doing this. This was fun.
This has been another episode of the Artist Spotlight Podcast with me, Chip Freund. Today, our guest was Sally Terrell. If you're interested in seeing Sally's work in person, you can check out her work and the work of many other talented local artists at the Cary Gallery of Artists in downtown Cary. You can also find her work on her website, havenhillstudios.com. Thank you for joining us. This has been the Artist Spotlight with Chip Freund. Find accompanying blog posts at chipfreundphoto.com/blog, and you may subscribe to our show on Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you like listening.